Okay, just having a look now at a typical engine in a narrowboat. I'm here and this is a Barris Shanks engine, which is a 4-cylinder engine. You can tell this by the number of pots on the top of the engine actually here. When I was talking earlier, I mentioned sets of batteries. This particular boat has two very distinctive sets of batteries. One start battery, totally independent of the domestics over on this swim here, and underneath the feet here in this box is a set of domestic batteries. The idea being that you can never knowingly flatten the domestics and the start batteries at the same time, so you can always start your engine and get your batteries back up to life. This boat is fitted with a self-managing, self-charging system that here in the engine room has two alternators. These alternators are these units here, which are used to charge up the two separate banks of batteries. One for your start battery, one for your domestic batteries. They operate when you actually turn the battery isolators on in the cabin area, or sometimes that are found down here in the engine bay. They're there to actually top the batteries up when you're actually running along, cruising along, or trying to maintain your 12-volt supply. On all engines there is some basic maintenance you need to do. One of the things you need to be aware of is to check your oil, and there is a dipstick here, and they're found on engines all over the place, but they tend to be a different colour, like this one's bright yellow, to actually show you exactly where it is. You also have on the boat a filler point for the header tank for the water that goes into the actual engine and keeps the engine cool. On this particular boat it's actually above the well deck for ease of actual entry and checking of it, but normally they're hidden on a bulkhead somewhere inside this engine bay here, and it's quite obvious what they are because the hoses from the engine will run straight the way through to that point, and you can see that these actually flow up to the header tank, which is outside here on this particular boat. That's what keeps the expansion of the engine allows for the expansion of the water in the engine as you're cruising along or running your engine to top up your batteries. Most boats, narrow boats, are what we call keel cooled. This area here is the keel of the boat, the stern of the boat, and what you have is what is called a slab tank in this area here. This is what, when you see in a description of a boat, whether or not it's keel cooled, raw water cooled or air cooled, the majority of them are keel cooled, and any excess heat from the engine flows through the pipe system here. It will heat hot water up through there, which I can show in a later video, and then any excess heat is cooled by this slab tank here that is in direct contact with the canal water on the outside. So it keeps the engine cool by the flow of that water actually passing past that when the boat is stationary or cruising along. It's a very important part of the boat's setup, and it's controlled very much like a car engine through thermostats and flow valves throughout the whole process. One of the other things to be very mindful of on boats is the area here just below my feet. This is the gearbox area and what is called the stern tube assembly. This is what connects the drive of the engine to the propeller on the outside of the boat, and is a very, very important coupling between the two units. If this is stood on by accident, or if it has contact with some debris in the canal, you can actually bend these and you will actually get water coming into the actual boat, which isn't a problem as long as you have something like this, a bilge pump, which will cope with any of that water actually coming through into the engine. A lot of boats have what you call a stern tube and a stern tube greaser. This one has a system that is a Cutlass bearing. It's a wet bearing. It means that the water from the outside of the canal actually comes into this area here and actually is cooled and keeps the free running of the system by the flow of water into it. There is a pipe on the top of here, which feeds into what is called the weed hatch. The weed hatch is a very, very important part of the boat's construction. For these particular units, any excess water that's pushed into here, specifically when the propeller is going in reverse, feeds the water up here into the weed hatch and can be dispelled without it actually going into the boat. The weed hatch itself is your access to the propeller and the outside world of the canal. As the name would suggest, it is a hatch that you can open by means of undoing this bar, which is very tight, as it should be, taking this off, and you have access then to the propeller. I'll try and get it off and so we can see. So in here you have direct access down into the propeller, and it's designed so that if you're cruising along and you have some weed or rope or other debris actually foul your propeller, which can stall your engine, you can stop your engine if it hasn't stalled already, isolate the boat by taking the keys out and stopping the batteries, and get your hands in here and actually remove any debris from the prop without actually taking the boat out of the water. It's a very important part of the boat, but can be a very, very dangerous part of the boat. If that isn't sealed properly when you restart your boat, you can start to flood the engine, because this will bubble as the prop turns and all the water will come into the engine bay as you cruise along. That's a basic overview of engines and stern gears, and hopefully it's been of interest to you.